My dad said that he never spent one-on-one time with Elvis. Now, he met him on several occasions, but every time there would be like 10 people around, like all of his handlers making sure that didn't go anywhere without them knowing exactly where he was and what he was doing. He said it was a very controlled environment every time he saw him, no matter what they were doing. I know when Elvis was playing Polk Salad Annie the first time, he flew my mom and dad out to Vegas, and so they got to go see him perform there. And apparently, as my mom says, like, when he went to announce, like, my dad was writing the song for him, and in the audience, my dad was in the bathroom or something. And so my mom's like, of course he missed it, like the whole reason we went out there. But she said it was really, really cool. And then he said that one other time he got a call in the middle of the night at home, and the person was like, Mr. White, we have your tape for Elvis. Would you please come to the studio? And so he said he went to the studio, and they were recording I've Got a Thing About You, Baby. And so my dad went to the studio and like heard that, and was like, this is crazy. I can't believe what's happening. And so he went home, and then he said like 2 nights later he got another call, and it's like, Mr. White, do you have more songs you can bring to the studio? And he was like, yeah. So he said he went to the studio and brought more songs, and they ended up recording For Old Time's Sake as well. But it's just a different day and age. But from what he said, Elvis was always protected. He said one time Elvis asked him to show him a few guitar chords backstage or something, and he did, I think because he was going to record Rainy Night in Georgia, and he ended up not recording it. But there's a video of Elvis in the back seat of a limo just before he passed away where he's like humming it and singing it a little bit. So I think my dad was trying to teach him to play that. And I think as he was leaving, my dad said something to him like, hey, let's go fishing sometime when you're back in Memphis. And Elvis just started dying laughing, like, no one's ever asked me to go fishing. So that was, a small amount of time together, but very special.
I would love to hear Elvis singing Rainy Night in Georgia.
Oh, it would be so good.
Yeah. From a business side, was this life-changing stuff for your dad to get an Elvis cut at this time?
Yeah, yes. At that time, absolutely. His career really started in the late 60s, Polk Salad Annie, and then he released more albums. But at that point, like, Warner Brothers was realizing, like, he's not someone who wants to tour all the time. He's not going to move to Los Angeles or to New York and do press all the time. He's, wants to live out in the country and write songs. And so they weren't really putting a lot of like press behind him because he just, he really wasn't being cooperative. And so these Elvis cuts came around that time when he wasn't being cooperative as an artist. And so it really helped out, and I think made him realize, like, okay, this songwriting is maybe more important than being an artist, being a singer.
Okay, you don't have to answer this, but there's an ongoing thing about if Elvis cut a song, Colonel Tom would want to get half the publishing on it. Something like that. You don't have to answer it, but did your dad ever face anything like that?
I don't believe so, because we own the publishing on those songs. So I don't know if maybe there was an extra layer of protection with Combine Music at that point in time. But no, he didn't have to give away his publishing, luckily. Elvis was like his earliest, one of his earliest inspirations in music, besides blues artists, obviously, with John Lee Hooker and Lightning Hopkins were, at the forefront. But then when Elvis's music came around, that really changed how he saw things and saw himself as an artist. So in the very early days in Corpus Christi, he was basically an Elvis impersonator. I mean, not totally, like, he was singing songs of all kinds of different songs, but he was singing a lot of Elvis songs, and he looked a lot like Elvis and sang a lot like Elvis, and was, that was his inspiration at that point in time. So when Elvis recorded his songs and he heard it, he said it was just a dream come true. Like he never, in a million years thought that would happen. That would be like, a football player holding up the Super Bowl trophy in his mind. Yeah, I'm not sure about, how Elvis and the Beatles resonate with younger audiences today. Now, that being said, if it's not resonating with audiences today, then in 20 years, there will be, it'll be back and there'll be a giant uptick. It's just everything is so cyclical in the music industry about this is good now and oh, this isn't cool anymore. And then it's not cool now. And then in 30 years, it's the best. Like, it's just how it goes. So Duck Dunn, the bass player for the Blues Brothers, when we were in Memphis, that was my dad's best friend. So they were fishing buddies. They would go to Lake Sardis. They hung out all the time. And so our house would be kind of a hangout destination again, because my dad had a home studio. So like Duck Dunn would be over there, and just other members of Booker T and the MGs or Blues Brothers, like hanging out at our house all the time when I was, like, those are my earliest memories when I was, that would have been probably 2 or 3 years old, running around and seeing those guys at the house. And I remember going fishing with Duck Dunn a couple of times too.
When they were in Memphis, did they ever go see wrestling?
Yes, I actually went with my mom, took me to see wrestling, and it was just the two of us. And I remember getting terrified because I was a little bit too young for it. And the Moondogs, I remember, were going against the Fabulous Ones, and they pulled out these bones and like started just beating them down, and there was blood everywhere. And I was probably, 4 or 5, and was like, started crying. I was like, I'm ready to go, Mom. And, there were a lot of, I think, scary people around, like staring at her. And, I remember leaving the wrestling early.
Did your dad know any of the wrestlers?
No, I don't recall like Jerry Lawler or anybody like that, like, being at our house. Now, when he played concerts, I would say they probably came out when he was playing on Beale Street at Rum Boogie and some of those places.
Memphis is such an interesting place, in the 60s.
Yeah, I love that city. Yeah. Memphis is a great city.
It has a pulse.
It does. It's a one of a kind. I'm hopefully people can appreciate it for being a great city. And the musical history of Memphis was like, that's why my dad moved to Memphis, was for the music. He moved to Nashville just because he was wanting to get more into like the writing side and the publishing side. But when it was time to make music, it was the people in Memphis is who he called. It's interesting, and I was talking to someone about this last week, is that even though he made so many different types of music, right? My dad made pop music, right? Songs that Tina Turner recorded, and then songs that Elvis recorded, ballads, and then he did country songs that Tim McGraw recorded and Waylon, and then he made soul songs that Ray Charles recorded, and then he had his own type of sound in the 90s where he had like some songs with Joe Cocker, and is like he was a blues artist primarily, right? And at the backbone of everything, he was a blues artist, but he skated around every genre of music, flawlessly, not even really thinking about it. It was just freedom, and there was even some jazz, even though, he wasn't a jazz artist, just some of the measures of songs where all of a sudden he's playing like, it's just something very uncharacteristic, but whatever it is that he wants to do at that point in time. But at the end of the day, it always sounds like Tony Joe White.